Starting off at number 10, we have Adrien Brody. Adrien Brody is a well-respected dramatic actor, winning the Oscar in 2002 for the Best Actor in The Pianist, with him kissing presenter Halle Berry on stage. Then on the heels of his new fame, he was asked to host SNL in 2003. And when he was introducing the musical guest, Jamaican singer Sean Paul, he not only made everyone cringe with embarrassment, but he also broke one of the golden rules of live TV. For the introduction, Brody took it upon himself to grab a dreadlock wig and ramble in a problematic Jamaican accent for way too long before handing things off. And even though the Jamaican accent was offensive and he probably should have been banned for just that, the bit wasn't planned and he ended up wasting a lot of valuable airtime, which caused the ban. Brody spoke about the ban with the Huffington Post and said that he might be banned, but he never heard anything official about it. In at number 9, Sinead O'Connor. Sinead O'Connor was asked to perform on SNL in 1990, in the peak of her fame, but she ended up bailing when she realized comedian Andrew Dice Clay was going to be hosting. And although it put a wrinkle in things, they were still able to manage. O'Connor finally performed on SNL in October of 1992, but SNL was probably wishing that she didn't, because O'Connor ended the performance by holding up a picture of Pope John Paul II, ripping it up and stating, quote, "Fight the real enemy," obviously offending millions of people. The show quickly cut after they saw what happened, but the damage was already done and tons of angry calls came in. One audience member tried to assault O'Connor and had to be removed by security. Unsurprisingly, O'Connor never played SNL again. Wonder why? In at number 8, Kanye West. It's no shock that Kanye's banned. Honestly, I'm shocked he's not banned from everything at this point. Before the ban, West appeared on the show 7 times and always managed to bring an incredibly thought-out performance to the show. West is even held in such high regards that SNL producers allowed him in a rare third performance segment in that particular episode. But they were shocked when instead of playing a song, he made an entire speech praising President Trump while wearing one of his mega hats. NBC cut the speech short for viewers, and the outburst was not received well by the live audience members. Not long after, West claimed on Twitter that SNL producer Laurie Metcalf had asked him to return to, quote, host before the year is out. But according to Radar Online, Kanye was actually banned instead, and the latter seems a lot more likely to me. In at number 7, David Bowie. In 1997, David Bowie was banned, and from what happened, he totally deserved it. Basically, he was asked to be the musical guest, and he was gonna act in a sketch too, but they made a sketch where Bowie would sing parodies of his own songs. Bowie told Post, quote, "One of the things they came up with was a version of my song, Watch That Man, but instead in the chorus I would sing Try Our Flan." Apparently the writers and Bowie fought over the pronunciation of the word flan though. Flan? I could be messing it up right now. And literally during the broadcast, Bowie said he wasn't gonna do the skit anymore, and he wanted to change the song he was performing. Instead of performing, quote, Telling Lies as rehearsed, Bowie played his 1980 track Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. And the reason is really awful. Apparently Lorne Michaels told Bowie that the song reminded him of a very dark time in his life, and I guess the reason Bowie played it was out of spite. Apparently, as soon as the song was over, Bowie claimed he was escorted from the building and banned from SNL. However, in late 1999, he was back as a musical guest after apparently smoothing things over with Michaels, saying, quote, "We're mates. He knows now that I was just trying to get a rise out of him." And at number 6, Martin Lawrence. Martin Lawrence's monologue on SNL was so bad that a section of it was actually removed from the live broadcast because the network wouldn't let it air. And if you're wondering what kind of stuff is so bad it won't get aired on television, well, his monologue was talking about genital hygiene of intimate areas, specifically of female intimate areas. And the whole thing was just really crass and explicit. When the episode aired later that night for West Coast viewers, NBC cut out the portion of the monologue and replaced it with text explaining the gist of Lawrence's commentary and how, quote, network policy prevents any rebroadcasting of that routine. The rest of the show went on as usual, but Lawrence was obviously banned from the show right after. Halfway number 5, Cypress Hill. The group Cypress Hill was known for a lot of things back in the day. One in particular was their love of smoking weed. And apparently even though they were told not to touch the substance the night they were on the show, they of course did. Member DJ Muggs said he, quote, felt like he needed to make a statement with his performance, and that came in the form of him smoking on live TV. And this was back in 1993 when TV was a whole lot different than it is now. Muggs asked Sen Dog to light the joint, but he refused, so Muggs just did it himself. The group claims that the SNL cast came up to them right after and told them how cool they thought the stunt was, but obviously this is live TV people, and the network was not happy, resulting in a lifelong ban from the show. And at number 4, The Replacements. The band The Replacements made fools out of themselves during their performance on SNL, and that was because the band was totally sloshed while performing. Apparently it was a pre-show ritual for them to drink before performing, but SNL has a dry set, so they don't allow alcohol beforehand. Apparently the band got around this by having their sound guy sneak in booze after a pre-show sound check, and by the time they went on, they were hammered. And it was very easy to tell from the footage of the performance. The lead singer wandered away from the mic, the bassist was stumbling, and the guitarist was late to start his solo. So the lead singer actually yelled kind of into the mic, "Come on, effer," to cue him, which was picked up by the mic. And just when it couldn't get any worse, one of the guys ripped their pants at the very end with their rear end out for the world to see. The guys even trashed their hotel room after, that was paid for by SNL. So, I mean, yeah, obviously they were banned after that. That's like 4 strikes against them. In at number 3, Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa was a special type of musician that often infused humor into his music, which made him a great fit for Saturday Night Live, where he was asked to host and be the musical guest in October of 1978. But his performance was so bad, SNL writer and performer Don Novello called it, quote, "one of the worst ever." Apparently the final dress rehearsal before the show went so bad that Zappa tried to change his entire approach to the show, but he didn't tell anyone else. And apparently his strategy was to somewhat make fun of the show itself and made the audience aware when things were scripted, with someone from the cast saying, quote, "he read the cue cards like he was reading the cards, like he made a point of it." That was his approach to the humor. No one else in the sketches knew it. SNL producer Laurie Metcalf did not like the unapproved take on their material and never let him come back. And at number 2, Elvis Costello. Elvis Costello broke one of the major rules of SNL, and that is going against Lorne Michaels, and he paid the price by getting banned. A December 1977 episode featured Elvis Costello as the musical guest, and he played Watching the Detectives in his first slot. Then in his second slot, he started playing Less Than Zero, but then decided to change his mind midway through the song. He told the band to stop playing and told the audience, quote, "I'm sorry ladies and gentlemen, there's no reason to do this song here." He then decided to play Radio Radio, which is one song he was told not to play because of how critical of mass media the song is. And because he stopped the show and changed the song, he was banned. However, it wasn't lifelong, and Michaels let him back in 1989. And even joked about getting banned on SNL's 25th anniversary show, so it seems like it all ended well. And finally, number 1, Andy Kaufman. This is a crazy one because Andy got himself banned. So the situation here was that he was put on the show back in 1975 and he managed to gain the audience off of the show. So SNL had him back many times over the years, with him appearing 10 times in the late 70s and early 80s. But one of his bits went south when it had lifelong consequences. Basically, in one skit, he told an SNL producer to read a statement on air in 1982 explaining that Kaufman's scheduled appearance had been canceled because, quote, "Andy Kaufman is not funny anymore." Then the viewers were told to decide Andy's fate, with them able to vote on if he would be banned from the show or not. And sadly for Andy, they voted to ban him for life. The self-imposed ban was never lifted, and he never performed again until he passed away in 1984. And at number 10, Rage Against the Machine. The band Rage Against the Machine was banned from SNL after they performed in 1996, which, fun fact, is the year that I was born. And probably a big part of why was because they decided to pair the band with billionaire and former presidential candidate Steve Forbes. And having an extremely wealthy businessman perform with an anti-capitalist band probably isn't a recipe for success. And the band decided to rebel against Forbes and make their anti-capitalist stance known by hanging American flags upside down on the stage. But after a spectacle like that, they were promptly kicked off the show. Right after they finished the set, producers told the band to leave the premises, no second song. And at number 9, Steven Seagal. Actor Steven Seagal was banned off SNL in 1991. He didn't do anything bad on live TV, which is good, but he just had an all-around bad vibe that the cast did not want to have to deal with ever again. Sources with the show said that his ideas were not only not funny, but he didn't get what made other sketches work. And instead of getting help with his sketches and leaning on the pros, he decided to get nasty instead. Former cast member Tim Meadows explained, quote, "He just wasn't funny and was very critical of the cast and the writing staff. He didn't realize that you can't tell someone they're stupid on Wednesday and expect them to continue writing for you on Saturday." And obviously getting on the bad side of the people that are supposed to help you be funny and look good on TV is a terrible idea, and hopefully he learned his lesson. And at number 8, Robert Blake. Robert Blake was banned off SNL in 1982, apparently because the star was a menace on set and started drama with tons of the cast members. At one point, he even allegedly assaulted a writer. Former writer Dave Sheffield remembers the incident. And when talking about the worst host, he said, quote, "My vote for worst host is Robert Blake. He was sitting in a room and a sketch was handed to him by Gary Kroeger, who was a writer and actor. It was a sketch called Breezy Philosopher, a one-premise sketch about a lofty teacher who's kind of a biker tough guy talking about Kierkegaard. Students kept asking questions while he combed his hair and he'd say, quote, 'Hey, I don't know.' Blake sat there and read that with his glasses down his nose, then crumpled it up, turned to Kroeger and said, 'I hope you got a tough a-hole, pal, because you're gonna have to wipe your ass with that one,' and then threw it off Gary's face." So a very interesting story that basically just proves that he was not very good to work with. And at number 7, Fear. The band Fear was banned in 1981. The only reason the band was even given the honor to perform on SNL was because former cast member John Belushi lobbied for the band to be on the show. And although Lorne Michaels was reluctant, the band was able to get a spot. One big reason was because Belushi promised to appear in a small role in the episode as an extra incentive. But after their performance, the extra incentives were definitely not worth it. The band decided to bring along a bunch of slam dancers that caused so much damage to the set, was estimated to cost around $200,000 to fix it all. And I doubt John Belushi had much say at SNL after that incident. And at number 6, Milton Berle. Milton Berle was banned off the show in 1979, and the reason for this was because he was incredibly entitled and acted better than the show itself, which is never a good vibe for a collaborative environment. Apparently, when he pitched a sketch, he told the cast, quote, "Now this might go over your heads," and things, didn't get any better on air. He tried to take all the camera time he could, shamelessly plugged his own product, and made his groupies lead a standing ovation. One of the show's writers, Rosie Schuster, described the rehearsal for the Berle SNL show and the telecast as, quote, "watching a comedy train accident in slow motion on a loop." Yikes! Halfway number 5, Charles Grodin. Charles Grodin was banned for a very strange reason, and that was apparently because he wasn't cool and didn't mesh well with the cast. And he also didn't seem to care much about the show in general. He apparently skipped rehearsals, which are crucial for a live show, and also improvised lines, which is another huge no-no for live TV. But along with this, his lame attitude rubbed the cast the wrong way. John Belushi once said of Grodin, quote, "He doesn't smoke dope. He's not one of us." And I definitely don't agree that someone not smoking should make you dislike them, but I would assume it's probably a mix of everything that got him banned. And at number 4, Louise Lasser. Louise Lasser was actually the first person who was ever banned off SNL. Lasser was the ex-wife of Woody Allen, who appeared in Bananas and other early features in Allen's filmography. And she was pegged to host a 1976 episode. But less than an hour before the episode went on, Lasser decided to lock herself in a dressing room. And this is live TV, people. You cannot have that before a show. And since she didn't seem like she was going to come out, the cast decided to last minute divide her parts of the show up to themselves. Eventually, she did come out and ended up doing one sketch, but was never let back because they could not risk that ever happening again. And at number 3, Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase was a huge success on SNL and leveraged his success on the show to branch out to other things. But he ended up being the only SNL member banned from the show. Apparently, Chase was a handful from the start and insulted plenty of guests that came on the show, like Robert Downey Jr. and Terry Sweeney. But the last straw came in 1997 after it was revealed that he had been harassing women of the show, like one woman who he allegedly hit on the back of the head. But it seems like the ban only applied to hosting, as he did participate in some sketches down the line. And at number 2, Jenny Slate. Jenny Slate had a very unfortunate mishap that caused her time on SNL to be cut short. On September 26th of 2009, she made her SNL debut in a Biker Babes sketch alongside Kristen Wiig and actress Megan Fox. And in the sketch, the women repeatedly use the word frickin' because they can't say the actual F word, on network TV. But in one instance, Slate accidentally said the real F word instead, which was heard live across the country. It was dubbed over for the recorded viewings, but at that point, the damage was done. Slate was pulled back in subsequent episode and fired from the show at the end of the season as a result. And finally, at number 1, Shane Gillis. Comedian Shane Gillis is the most recent person to get the boot from SNL, and he was actually cut from the show before he was even able to appear on an episode. After it was announced that Shane, along with 2 other new cast members, were going to be on the upcoming season of SNL, past tweets were revealed that showed Gillis using racist and homophobic slurs. A spokesperson gave a statement on the show's decision to pull Gillis. Quote, after talking with Shane Gillis, we've decided that he will not be joining SNL. We want SNL to have a variety of voices and points of view within the show. The language he used is offensive, hurtful, and unacceptable. We are sorry that we did not see the clips earlier and that our vetting process was not up to our standard.
At number 5, Carmen. For so many up-and-coming performers, you want to get yourself out in front of as many people as possible. Fame, after all, is based on talent and fan base, so if you can get as many people as possible engaging with your content, then you're golden. For many people, SNL can be a quick way to get to the top, but for others, it can ruin your career even before they really got it started. This is sort of what happened with music duo Carmen in February of 2012. SNL can be a testing ground for a lot of new artists, as new audiences are able to get a feel for this new talent. In January 2012, Lana Del Rey made her debut, and though she had some negative reviews, particularly those saying that she looked lost and distant on stage, she was able to then turn these reviews into the image that she holds today with her almost ethereal performances. But just a month later, when Carmen took the stage, their performance wasn't strong enough to catapult their career like it did for Lana. Carmen, though now disbanded and rebranded, was a music duo that got their start on YouTube by posting covers. Eventually, they got a large following by posting renditions of songs like Party Rock Anthem and Super Bass, and they were able to release original songs with the help of their newly signed music label. The casting director over at SNL found them and invited them to perform on the show, and so they did. They performed their songs Broken Hearted and I Told You So, and after their performance, the reviews came pouring in and it wasn't good. They faced a lot of criticism saying that they failed to connect with the audience, and one critic saying that their performance caused, quote, mild auditory distress. They were never really able to bounce back from this catastrophe of a performance, and so they eventually faded away, ending their careers. At number 4, Charles Rocket. There was a time when SNL was in big trouble. From 1980 to 1981, SNL was facing a bout of struggle and negativity following a controversial position change as they promoted Gene Dumanian to executive producer after Lorne Michaels took a break from the show. Because of this position change, most of the cast left, prompting Gene to have to hire a new cast. This new cast was untested, and so the 80-81 season was really just in the dirt. One incident made things worse for everyone, and that was when comedian Charles Rocket dropped an F-bomb during a skit. Though SNL skits can be controversial, one thing that is absolutely a no-go are those pesky F-bombs, and so dropping one can be very bad for you and the studio. During the season's 11th episode, Charles was closing out the show and for whatever reason decided to let an F-bomb fly. While doing his closing, Charles, in reference to a skit that he did earlier in the show, said, quote, it's the first time I've been shot in my life. I'd like to know who the F did it, end quote. If you watch this footage back, you can tell that this wasn't an accidental slip up on Charles' part, and that he actually meant to say it. This was the last straw for the studio, and they fired much of the cast and crew, including Gene and Charles. This whole F-word scandal came so close to sinking the entire show for good, but it sure did sink a lot of people's careers. If you're enjoying the video so far, please consider leaving a like to help support the channel, and also if you're in the mood, check out my gaming channel for some extra content with me. I promise it's fun. At number 3, Jenny Slate. Sometimes it takes a mistake to realize that you just aren't cut out for something. Mistakes are good for teaching us things, even though they totally suck in the moment. This was pretty much the case with comedian Jenny Slate during her brief time on SNL. Though she's pretty successful now, back in 2009 when she worked on SNL, she was still up and coming, looking to get her foot in the door. Things were starting to look up for Jenny when she landed the coveted role on SNL as a writer and performer, but things quickly took a nosedive as she messed up pretty big during her very first performance. In her first appearance as a member of the cast on the show, she was performing one of the sketches that she wrote called Biker Chick Chat, and in one of her lines, she accidentally switched up her words from being PG-13 to being a little more adult. Jenny ended up committing one of the greatest SNL sins, saying the F-word. She caught herself saying it but just brushed it off, pretending like no one else heard it, but unfortunately people did hear it. This mistake sort of stuck with her while she was working there, and though she wasn't fired for that specific reason, she did end up leaving at the end of that season. Though there was a misconception that the F-bomb was what ended her SNL career, Jenny said in an interview that, quote, that's not why I got fired. I just didn't belong there. I didn't do a good job. I didn't click. I have no idea how Lauren felt about me. All I know is it didn't work for me and I got fired, end quote. Her career eventually picked up, but it probably set her back a bit after being fired from SNL. At number 2, Ashlee Simpson. Now I know we talked about one music act who destroyed their career on SNL, but here's another one for you that you might be more familiar with. After this performance, her career was never the same. Ashlee Simpson was getting her music career off the ground in the early 2000s, and in 2004 she was invited to perform a couple of songs on SNL. Like like I said before, this kind of opportunity can be a big deal for some, but for others it can be detrimental. Anything can happen during a live performance and it could be good or catastrophic. Well, Ashley accepted the invitation to perform and geared up to perform her songs Autobiography and Pieces of Me. The performance of Pieces of Me went off without a hitch. Actually, it was pretty successful and got her and the audience pumped for another song, but this is where things turned sour. As the band got ready to start playing Autobiography, a track started playing and it wasn't what people were expecting to hear. Instead of hearing an instrumental for the correct song, they were instead listening to a pre-recorded vocal track of Ashley singing Pieces of Me. This accidental slip-up revealed to everyone that she had been lip-syncing the entire time. Ashley froze for a second and then started doing a weird and very awkward dance before rushing off the stage. It was mortifying and very detrimental to her career, and this incident stuck with her for a year. Later on down the line, Ashley spoke out about that incident, saying that it was partially her dad's fault that this happened, saying that he suggested that she make a backup track because she was having troubles with her voice and didn't want to have her strain it more. Now Ashley looks back on this incident saying that it certainly sucked, but she's stronger for it, and that's a positive way to look at things. Way to go, Ashley. And finally, at number 1, Sinead O'Connor. Probably one of the biggest SNL controversies to date comes from the drama surrounding Sinead O'Connor, the Catholic Church, and SNL. The show has had its fair share of controversies and scandals in the past, but I think few of them come close to this one that happened on October 3rd, 1992. On this episode, Sinead was asked to perform a few songs from her newest album at the time, and she agreed, but there was a little fine print to accompany her appearance. She refused to perform one of her original songs. Instead, Sinead opted to sing Bob Marley's song War. The show's executives thought this was a bit of a bizarre request, but they went along with it anyway because they thought that no matter what she sang, it would still be a captivating performance. Well, it was captivating alright, but not for the reasons that anyone was expecting. That night during her performance, Sinead did a very dramatic rendition of the song, even switching up some of the lyrics to change the context and meaning. It was all starting to get a little tense until Sinead blew the doors off the performance by ending it with her ripping up a photo of Pope John Paul II saying, quote, "Fight the real enemy." She did all of this as a means to raise awareness about the alleged abuse going on in the Catholic Church because she had personal experience with those who were allegedly hurt by members of the church and she wanted to fight against it. This stunt prompted a lot of anger towards Sinead as well as the show. For days following her performance, NBC received thousands of angry calls condemning them for allowing something like this to happen. Other celebrities like Madonna and Joe Pesci also had some harsh words for Sinead, and this stunt ruined her career after this, as no one was quick to forget this scandal.
Kicking off our list at number 10 is Ashlee Simpson. While it's no surprise anymore that singers will lip sync their way through a performance, her lip sync fail was one that has gone down in history. It's hard to forget that performance, which happened on SNL back in 2004. It was that thing that pretty much ended her career. I feel like once people catch you lip syncing, they have a hard time trusting your talent because they don't know what's real and what's not. If you haven't seen it, she was performing her song and the music tracks started playing behind her as she started singing, but the timing was very off, so it revealed that she wasn't actually singing and that she was just mouthing the words to the track behind her. Isn't that great? It was extremely awkward because they actually had to stop and reset the track, but by that point everyone knew that she was lip syncing. You can tell she didn't know what to do with herself, so she just started doing this really weird, awkward dance trying to laugh it off, but it just made the whole thing even more awkward. I still get secondhand embarrassment from that. Up next, number 9, we have Adrien Brody. Not everyone has a good hosting experience on the show, and Adrien was so bad that he was banned from the show. After his appearance back in 2003, he was removed from the list of potential future hosts because he went on stage in blackface. He walked on stage to introduce Sean Paul, the Jamaican reggae musician, and wore fake dreadlocks and talked in a fake Jamaican accent. For obvious reasons, people were offended by his little comedy skit and said it was cultural appropriation. The producer at the time, Lorne Michaels, was not thrilled with this decision either and said he had no idea that he was going to do that. It has been said that celebrities who appear on the show will often go unscripted while hosting, and it's not always a success. He was banned from hosting ever again, and in 2012, another celebrity went on the show to impersonate him. That's when you know you've messed up, when you end up in like an SNL skit of people making fun of you. Cruising into number 8 is Martin Lawrence. Back in 1994, people were thrilled to see him on the show, and by looking at his resume, he would be the perfect guest. He is known for being an actor and a comedian, so a monologue would be no problem for him, and he would guarantee a laugh from the audience, right? Well, not quite. It really just depends on what kind of humor you have. During his opening monologue, he went a little too far with his humor and started using inappropriate language. His jokes began to reference hygiene and the female body parts, private parts, and he used a bunch of curse words and just was basically out of control. Of course, this was not in the original script, but like I said, a lot of people like to improv when they go on the show. He was banned from the show, and the good news is the monologue was able to be edited in a way that they could remove most of it, so it did not damage the ratings that much. Yeah, probably not a good idea to make like hygiene jokes about female body parts. What? Coming up next, number 7 is The Replacements. The band was on a rise the year before their SNL performance, as they hired a New York management company and started to break out into the mainstream media. They came from the underground scene, and cleaning up their image was tough because the guitarist Bob Stinson had some drug and mental health issues, and tensions within the band seemed to be driving them apart. They went on SNL as a last-minute guest, replacing the original act, the Pointer Sisters, who canceled just a few days before. The band performed one of their songs completely wasted and completely out of tune, so Lorne Michaels banned them from returning to the show. Apparently, the band performed well at the early evening pre-taped dress rehearsal, but one of their crew members smuggled alcohol into their dressing room, and they spent the last few hours before the real show getting drunk with the guest host, Harry Dean. They were so drunk that on their way to the stage, Bob tripped and fell over his guitar and broke it. Like, you can't even fake being sober at that point. Up next, number 6 is Sinead O'Connor, a talented singer who rose to fame during the 80s and was often known for her controversial views about politics and other personal beliefs. Seeing as she had no problem speaking out about her strong beliefs, it wasn't all that surprising that she got banned from SNL after expressing them during one of her appearances. Many people tune into SNL for a good laugh, but her performance gave off a very different kind of vibe. She was invited on the show to perform, and while she was singing a cover of Bob Marley's War, she took out a picture of Pope John Paul II and started reciting the word evil, and then went on to rip it in half and say, "Fight the real enemy." The audience was left in complete shock and didn't know how to react to such a bizarre performance. She was banned from the show, and people talked about her performance for a very long time after that. I mean, we're still talking about it today. Halfway through our list, number 5 is Cypress Hills. The now iconic Californian hip-hop group made major headlines in 1993, and that is because they caused quite the controversy during their time on SNL. Marijuana was illegal at the time, and DJ Muggs, a member of the group, felt like he needed to make a statement about it during his performance. When appearing on the show, SNL, as well as his manager and record label, told him that he could not smoke up on air. One of the members later revealed that they all agreed they were not going to light up anything during their performance. But DJ Muggs rebelled and lit one up on stage, which the audience loved, but the producers did not. SNL immediately banned them from the show and also pulled their episode of ever appearing in reruns later on. Group member Sendog did an interview down the road and said, "It would have been cool to do Saturday Night Live again, but me personally, I didn't think it was a great thing to do our first time on SNL, but we paid the price and we moved on. Probably for the best." Taking over our number 4 spot is Andy Kaufman. While most people get banned after their performance in a private professional setting, that didn't happen to Andy when he got banned from the show. He went on the show in 1983, and the producer at the time, Dick Ebersol, banned him in a more dramatic and personal way. Andy had actually appeared on the show many times during the first season, being a huge contribution to the early days of SNL. But his jokes and acting were always very unpredictable and a lot of the times inappropriate. He was kind of known for that. But during one episode, the producer had enough and decided to make a show of it by asking the audience whether Andy should stay or leave the show. He literally did it on the spot and put Andy's fate in the hands of the audience. The final tally was $195,000 for removing him from the show and $169,000 for keeping him on. So he was kicked off the show and was not allowed to return, and sadly, he passed away just a year after this happened. Rolling into spot number 3 is Steven Seagal. critical. One thing that never goes over well in the entertainment industry is showing up to a job with a negative attitude and an ego. When the martial artist slash action movie star went on SNL as a guest host back in 1991, he went into it with a bit of a critical attitude. He struggled to make the sketches work and criticized the rest of the cast and the writing staff, which is highly offensive. And when he tried to rework some of the sketches on his own, they did not quite hit that comedic mark that SNL strives for. One former SNL cast member, Tim Meadows, recalled working with him and said he just wasn't very funny and he was very critical of the cast and the writing staff. He didn't realize that you can't tell somebody they're stupid on Wednesday and expect them to continue writing for you on Saturday. For that, he was asked to not return to the show. Not surprised. Making her way into number 2 is Louise Lasser. She was best known for her role in the 1970s soap opera Mary Hartman, Mary Hartman. So fans were excited to find out that she'd be hosting SNL, but it seemed like she wasn't as excited as they were. In fact, reports say she had a miserable time hosting and didn't want to do it. Even though she's not the first one on our list, she was actually the very first person to ever get banned from SNL. So she basically started it all. During her opening monologue, she mentioned that her TV show character, Mary Hartman, was in the middle of having a nervous breakdown. She then started to emulate her character and started rambling about how scared she was to be on live television. At first, people thought she was just acting and like playing up this character, but then she ran off stage and locked herself in her dressing room, like mid-performance. Other cast members tried to coax her out of the room, but only Chevy Chase was successful. But even after the show continued on, she kept forgetting her lines, and the episode ended with her sitting on the studio floor talking about her personal problems. She was banned from the show, but in 2013, she did an interview and said she intentionally made it look like she was having a breakdown because she didn't want to perform the sketches that they had written for her. So it was kind of like a planned out tantrum on stage as a way to prove a point. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot is Kanye West. He has appeared as a musical guest on the show more than 7 times and always gave killer performances that the fans expected. But one performance was not like the rest. During an episode in 2018, he brought his own set pieces, light shows, special effects, and even costumes. He and Lil Pump performed a song, and they did it while wearing huge movement-restricting water bottle costumes. Was it weird? Yes. But since Kanye was held in such high regard with SNL, they allowed him a 3rd performance in that episode. Rather than just playing a song, he delivered a speech in praise of former President Donald Trump while wearing one of his Make America Great Again hats. Not what he was invited on the show to do. NBC actually cut the speech short for viewers, and even when SNL's 90-minute time slot ran out, Kanye just continued to walk around the stage dismissing allegations of racism that were shot at Trump and criticized the mainstream media. Reports say he was banned from returning to the show, even though Kanye insisted on Twitter that he was asked to host the show. We're not really sure, but I have a feeling he got in some trouble for that.
In at number 10, Shane Gillis. Shane Gillis is the most recent cast member to be fired from the show, but his case is even more unique because he was fired from the show before he even made his first appearance. Gillis was set to appear on the 2019 season of the show, but after he was announced, racist tweets mocking Asian people resurfaced, as well as a video. An SNL spokesperson said in a statement on behalf of the show, quote, "After talking with Shane Gillis, we have decided that he will not be joining SNL," with the show adding that they were not aware of these statements before they decided to hire him. In a statement made after the decision, Gillis said, quote, "I respect the decision they made. I'm honestly grateful for the opportunity. I was always a Mad TV guy anyway." In at number 9, Adam Sandler. Yes, that's right. One of the most successful comedians ever, Adam Sandler, was fired from SNL. Sandler was fired in 1995 when he was 28 after being on the show for 5 years. Reflecting on the firing, he said on the Howard Stern show, quote, "At the time I was hurt because I didn't know what else I was going to do." He added, quote, "Yes, we were fired. We kind of quit at the same time as being fired. It was the end of the run for us. The fact that me and him got fired, who knows? We were on it for a few years, had a run, and everything happens for a reason. We kind of understood because we did our thing. It hurt a lot at the time because we were young and didn't know what we were doing, but it all worked out." And the we here speaking of is Chris Farley. But he seemed to be a good sport about things, and when he hosted SNL in 2019, he sang an entire song about how he was fired. In at number 8, Jenny Slate. When actress Jenny Slate was cast on SNL, she thought she would be entering the wild, wild west, but was shocked to learn just how restrained the cast members actually were, because it is network TV after all. Slate was fired after she broke the golden rule of live TV, no swearing. In 2009, during her very first sketch, she dropped the F-bomb. She said that immediately after, she understood what a big deal that it was, saying in an interview later, quote, "It felt like an explosion when I actually said the F word on live TV during my very first sketch. After it happened, Lorne Michaels wanted to make sure I was okay, because he knew I was scared. I had never been exposed so publicly. The aftermath was hard. People tweeted out that I was ugly and not funny, and it really stung." She even said that she never rewatched the clip of her swearing because she couldn't bear that humiliation. However, she did confirm later that the F-bomb was not actually the reason that she was fired, she just simply didn't belong there. In at number 7, Chris Rock. The story of why Chris Rock was fired is a great reminder that you should never talk about wanting to leave your job. Chris Rock became a cast member in 1990 and remained on the show for 3 seasons. But in 1993, he was let go from the show because he expressed interest in joining another sketch show called In Living Color, but that gig didn't work out. And In Living Color was taken off the air only 3 weeks after he joined. In 2019, Rock returned to SNL to joke about his firing in a song with Adam Sandler, where he said in part, quote, "I was fired by NBC, I went on In Living Color, 3 weeks later they took it off TV. But of course it all worked out and he became an incredibly successful actor." And at number 6, Laurie Metcalf. Academy Award nominated actress Laurie Metcalf was cast on SNL in 1981. However, her debut performance on the show was her last. After her first episode, the show immediately went on hiatus for a writer's strike, and when the show returned, she wasn't asked back. She spoke about the experience in an interview with Vulture years later, explaining that she was only in the city for 1 week, and for one of the sketches, she was sent out on the street with no idea what she was doing. Adding, quote, "When I see that, I realize I was very naive and brave about it in a way." She has gone on to be nominated for an Academy Award and 11 Emmys, winning 3. So I'm sure she's not bitter about it now. Halfway at number 5, Sarah Silverman. Sarah Silverman joined SNL in 1993 as a writer and cast member, but at the end of that season, she was fired from the show. To make things worse, she was fired by fax. Like, they didn't even have the courtesy to give her a phone call. Silverman said her firing was part of a big cast shakeup, and she even understands the decision, saying, quote, "By the way, I wrote not a single funny sketch, so that might have had something to do with it too." But she quickly made a name for herself outside of the show, and she's now famous for her brash stand-up comedy. And at number 4, Robert Downey Jr. It's insane to ever think that Iron Man could get fired from a job, but he did. In 1985, Downey Jr. was hired at the age of 20 for the show's 11th season, but he only ended up lasting 1 year. Downey has never admitted to being fired, but did admit that he was, quote, "ill-suited to the show," telling off camera in 2019, quote, "I learned so much in that year about what I wasn't. I was not somebody who was going to come up with a catchphrase. I wasn't somebody who was going to do impressions. I was somebody who was very ill-suited for rapid-fire sketch comedy. I was like, this seems really hard." And at number 3, Damon Wayans. Damon Wayans was hired in 1985, but only lasted 1 season because he changed a sketch without getting it approved. The issue was that he changed a straight character into a very flamboyant gay character without telling producers. The result was that Lorne Michaels fired Wayans for insubordination, according to GQ. Wayans told The Weekender in 2015, quote, "I knew I was going to get fired for it. Lorne did the right thing." And if you're wondering why he would do something that he knew was going to get him fired, Wayans said he made the decision because he was angry. Adding, quote, "They didn't let me do what I wanted to on SNL, which I came to learn was Lorne Michaels' way of protecting me from looking like I was trying to be the next Eddie Murphy." Later adding that the show would not let him do things that Eddie Murphy would do, but he got frustrated and decided to make his own script. But thankfully that wasn't the end for Wayans. Instead, he went on to star in the sketch comedy In Living Color for 3 seasons. And at number 2, Rob Riggle. Rob Riggle is another actor who only lasted 1 season on the show. He was hired in 2004, a former US Marine at the time. He blamed the fact that he was the only new person in the all-star cast, telling the Daily Beast in 2019, quote, "This is the first showbiz gig I ever got, so it's overwhelming to begin with. It's an unbelievable pace and pressure. I got to a point where I didn't even know what was funny anymore by the end of the season," saying he was working alongside huge names like Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Maya Rudolph, so obviously he was the one that was going to be getting the boot. Thankfully, his comedy career didn't end there. Riggle then went on to become a correspondent on The Daily Show and is now a commentator on Fox NFL Sunday. And finally at number 1, Michaela Watkins. Michaela Watkins joined the cast in 2008 but only lasted one season before Michaels let her go. Watkins told Entertainment Weekly after she was let go, quote, "The only explanation I got from him, and he's not known to say things just to make people feel better, was that he felt deep down that I should have my own show, and I agreed. SNL was a dream come true for me. It was a fantastic year. I don't have any regrets." She told Decider in a more recent interview that she thought joining SNL would be, quote, "her big break," and felt that it was going well. But at the end of the season, she was shocked when her contract was not renewed. Adding, quote, "Maybe I was delusional. I really wanted to go back. I would have been really happy if they'd had me for 3 seasons. I felt like that would have been a really nice time there, but they had me for 1, and then they had me no more." But she added it was a humbling experience.